Hi, this is Carson, and I'm with Troy, and I have with me a special guest, Aydin Rizqi. Now, Aydin is a teen author, and just for clarity, I did talk to his mother. We met at Dragonsteel, and I asked his mother before I talked to him about him being on the guest on the podcast. Aydin Rizqi is a fantasy author. He's the award-winning young author of K.I.D.S, K-I-D-S. He has been writing and telling stories since he was 7 years old, and his stories are inspired by the books he reads. As a young author, he is still learning about the publishing world, but receives a tremendous amount of support from his family and friends. He currently resides in California, where he spends his days reading, writing, watching movies, and eating burgers, which I love too. Um, you have a young authors writing group that you started, um, and the two series that I found, and you might have more that I did not find, is like I mentioned, the kids, K.I.D.S, and Ethan Anderson and the Wielders. Aydin, did I miss anything? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Aydin, and thank you for having me on, Carson. I'm really happy to be here. I'm 15 years old, and I have been writing books for a while now, and I've published around 10 books. My first series I wrote when I was 11, and it's called Ethan Anderson and the Wielders, as you mentioned. And then I have a few other book series, Kids, and a new series that I'm currently working on called The Last Mage. The first book is out already. But yeah, I'm just really happy to be here, as I said, and I look forward to telling you about my story.
Fantastic. What was the genesis for your first story? How did what was the seeds of that creation? Ethan Anderson.
Yeah, so when I was first coming up with Ethan Anderson, it was during the pandemic, and I've always had these ideas in my head ever since I was really, really young. I've always had like these fantasies, these imaginations in my head, and when I was younger, I really wanted to express that. So I started writing at a very young age, 7, as my bio says. But I I wasn't really able to take the leap until I turned 11. And during the pandemic, I was really, really bored because online school and everything, and I was still very young. I'm still young in terms today, but in my eyes, I'm very old now. But when I was coming up with like a story to write, I knew that I wanted to write something and actually get it published because I had published books before, but hadn't really sold them or told anyone about them. They were kind of just for myself as practice. But in 2020, I was reading a lot of books, watching a lot of movies because I love movies and I love reading books. So I was watching movies like Lord of the Rings, shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and reading books. Um, like Percy Jackson, Keeper of the Lost Cities, and lots of other books that really influenced me. And I kind of came up with the story about a boy who has these magical powers, but he doesn't really know it. And he comes across these people who have the same powers as him, and he discovers that he's something called a wielder, meaning that he can wield all the elements. In the book, it says like the powers of God, but they're basically just the elements. And that was just kind of like the one sentence, um, like that was just kind of like the story itself. That's kind of like what I had in one sentence, and then I kind of just went along that. And then in 2021, after writing, I finally got it published, which I was really, really proud of. And then the rest is history.
That's fantastic. COVID was hard for a lot of people, but a lot of blessings came out of that as well. You
Mhm.
had the time to take that opportunity to work on your story and, have a lot of things that influenced you. What drew you to the fantasy genre?
I've always loved fantasy. I love stories about knights and flying dragons, and that's just always appealed to me, ever since I was a little kid. I also love superheroes a lot. Superheroes are probably like my life. So that's why I wrote Kids as well, which is a story about these kids who are superheroes. But for the fantasy genre, I've always loved it. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings is my favorite. You can't beat me when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Um, and and lots of other books out there like Brandon Sanderson and Dragonsteel. That's why I attended because I knew that it was a great place for fantasy. And um, yeah, I just really, really love fantasy a lot.
Now, it's a big goal and big ambition to publish a book, and it's not very easy. What gave you the motivation to pursue that goal?
Mm, I I've always wanted to tell stories. I love storytelling a lot. And I've always wanted to express my imagination and all these ideas that I have in my head onto the page or make a movie or do something like that. And so when I was 11, I just decided one day that it kind of just came to me. This was a long time ago, but I guess it just came to me that like, hey, maybe I could publish a book because as I mentioned before, I had published a few books before, but they weren't like any big books. They were just books that I wrote myself and just didn't really tell anybody about it. I told kids at my school, obviously, told them, hey, I wrote this book. What I did in third grade when I first published my book, what I did was that I went around my class, and I had people put their names on the book, which is kind of weird because usually the authors put their names on the book and sign it for the reader. But I had my friend sign the book for me, but even that was a form of inspiration. And then my neighbor is actually a teacher, so I sent my books over to her. And this one wasn't really a published book. This is just something like a small comic thing that I had drawn after I read Dogman. Um, and her whole class read the books and they loved it and they sent me cards saying we love the story, we want you to write more. And over the years, like I started getting more inspired and more things motivated me, especially those letters from the first graders at that school. Those really motivated me to write my own books and eventually publish them. And then in 2021, I just decided to take the leap. I don't know really what came over me. I was just really bored back in 2020.
Awesome. Now, it's not an easy task, like I mentioned before,
Mhm.
to get a book publishable in publishable condition to put out there for the world. You have to find an editor. I love your book covers. How did you find your editor? You said you had a teacher
Yeah.
next door. Did you utilize that resource, or did you go out and find a professional editor? And how did you find your artist for your book?
Yeah, so everything I did was kind of just by myself. My parents are always here to support me, but I think my family really knew that I actually wanted to publish the book, so and because this is 2020, I had nothing to do aside from like finish some schoolwork. But then once I was done, it was either go watch movies or do something else. So I just spent a lot of time doing a lot of research, a lot of research that probably the amount of research high schoolers do today that I do in school right now. But so yeah, I did a lot of research. I searched through the internet for days and days and tried to find the best ways to get my books published. And I found Upwork. I found freelance websites like Upwork and Fiverr, stuff like that, websites like that. And I found my editor on an illustrator on Upwork. I just sent like a job post that I was like 11 years old back then, and I was just like I didn't really know how to make a job post, so I was just like I need an illustrator for my book. If you're interested, please contact me. And then some people were interested, and then eventually found my artist Devin Malpin. I think that's how you say his last name. But yeah, Devin, he's an amazing illustrator. I love all the artwork that he's provided for my books, and I'm very grateful that he is here. And that's what I do for all my other books, like Kids and the Last Mage. I found them on Upwork and on Fiverr, and that's the same thing I did for my editor. I found her on Upwork, and she has been with me for years now and has looked through all of my books and supported my journey for these past few years. So I'm really grateful that I have a supporting team on my side. And yeah, it just all came from doing a lot of research.
Awesome. Now, we met at Dragonsteel, and you live in California, like I mentioned.
Mhm.
What motivated you to put in for that? Because I mean, that was kind of a hard convention to get into. Not everybody was able to get into that.
Mhm.
What motivated you to do that?
Yeah, I am in the Bay Area in California, and I do a lot of book signings around the Bay Area. So the Bay Area community knows me. They've seen me around in restaurants, at book events, and lots of other things. And back in 2022, I had actually sold out at one of the Bay Area book festivals here. And I really wanted to do something outside of California or outside of the Bay Area, like something in maybe LA or in Texas. But I'm actually in contact with Christopher Paolini, who wrote Murtagh and Aragon and all these amazing books. And I saw him at, well, I didn't see him there because I wasn't there, but I saw an Instagram post where he was at Dragonsteel selling his books, and I was just like, oh, cool, I didn't even know about this. And then obviously this is Brandon Sanderson's event, and anyone who likes fantasy knows who Brandon Sanderson is. So I really wanted to. Um, and obviously, fantasy is my genre, so I really wanted to do something that's in my genre that I'm comfortable with, and Utah isn't that far from California. So, I just decided, hey, why don't I give this a try? My first out-of-state event, and it went really well. I sold lots of copies of my books, and I got a lot of support. Um, but yeah, I want to do more events outside of the Bay Area. I've applied for a few in Texas and LA, so hopefully those go just as well.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing you at other events, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, how do you balance creating a fantastical world while also grounding it in emotions and experience that readers can relate to?
My answer for that is that I just learned from my mistakes. When I was first writing my books, I'm gonna admit that I wasn't the best writer. In my mind, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be J.K. Rowling. I'm gonna be like Rick Riordan. My writing is so awesome." And then I read through it like today, and then I'm like, "What was I writing? Why? Why was I writing this?" And then so I didn't really have like the most relatable characters. My characters were kind of dull in the beginning, and there's lots of issues. Like the book itself was fine, but like I was kind of just nitpicking myself and my writing. And then over the years, like I started reading more books, I started watching more movies, and just understanding how the storytellers create characters and make them relatable and create these fantasy worlds and fantastical worlds with all these characters. And I kind of just had to understand how they did it so that I could also do it. And um, I also learned that I needed to have patience because when I was writing my books, when I was 11, 12 years old, I was just kind of like rushing my books. Like I remember I had published book three of Ethan Anderson, and then like 5 minutes later, I'm reaching out to my illustrator, being like, okay, let's work on book four right now. And then like the day after, we got in a meeting for book four. So, I realized that I was rushing my books. I asked my one of my mentors, as I should say, Stuart Gibbs, who wrote Spy School, and he said that, just be patient, don't rush yourself when you're writing. And I kind of just like took those words and instead of publishing 4 or 5 books in a year, I now publish around 1 or 2 books in a year, just so I can take the time to really let the books grow and let the stories and ideas grow and the characters grow themselves just so I can get an understanding of them. Because if I'm rushing every book and not being patient when it comes to creating my stories, my book won't be good. And that's what I tell everyone that I teach. Um, I have a club called the Young Authors Writing Group, and I tell everyone in that club and I say, hey, you guys are young, you guys haven't published books yet, but one thing you guys need to understand is that you guys really, really have to be patient, or else your book just won't be good.
That's great advice, and that's fantastic. Let's piggyback off that. You are a teenager. You got school alive. What are some of your writing habits?
Um, I really take the time to develop my stories. I am always thinking from the moment I wake up, I'm having these different ideas in my head. I think about them in the shower, I think about them on the way to school. Sometimes in class when I'm really, really bored, I think about them. And I just let them kind of play out in my mind, come up with stories, and then when I'm finally satisfied with an idea, I kind of like keep it in my mind. Like I don't usually write my story ideas down. It's all in my mind, and usually I know what I want to write because most of my books are in a series, so I know, okay, so this is what happens in book one. I have an idea of what's going to happen in book two, but what about book three? So for this last made series that I'm writing, I have everything planned out. Well, not everything, but majority of the stories, all 4 books in the series are planned out. And but I don't usually write them like I usually take a break when I'm writing them. I finished book two of The Last Mage last summer. Um, in like July or something, and I haven't even started book three. I've come up with the story, of course, but I haven't started book three just because I want to give it time to create new ideas and maybe And I'm always changing my ideas. Like one day I could be like, "Oh, this is a great idea," and then another day I could be like, "Oh, this is a better idea." Yeah, so I really just take my time with it, just patience.
What's your approach to world building?
So for world building, I usually just when I'm creating my stories, I don't really think about like the world and like what's going to be happening like outside of everything else. I don't really think about the lore. Usually I sometimes I do like for Ethan Anderson, it's kind of like it's not really lore heavy. Um it's not like Lord of the Rings where there's just so much lore. And even today when I'm like looking at Lord of the Rings, I'm like I did not know that. Um so I don't usually do that. I have an idea of like what I want the lore to be and world building and stuff like that, but I usually just stay grounded in the story. I usually think about the story itself, what the characters are going through, and usually I just kind of just world build as I'm writing it. I'll make something up, and if it fits in the story, I'll go with it. And yeah, that's just kind of like my world building process.
Awesome. So, I mean, your fantasy characters, the characters in your books are going to deal with obstacles.
Mhm.
How do you decide which obstacles they should face and make them feel both magical and real?
Um, as I said, I take a lot of inspiration from different stories out there, like the books I read, the movies I watch, and I kind of pull from that. I pull different ideas, like, oh, this is like a really cool sequence in Harry Potter, but this is also a really cool sequence in Star Wars. So what if I kind of like mixed it? And lots of other things that really inspire me and really fuel like what happens in the story. Obviously, I don't copy anything. Everything that I come up with is my own idea and what I think is best for the story, but I pull inspiration from other things. And um, yeah, I kind of just pull inspiration from what I have seen and what works in movies and the books that I read, and then I kind of just put my own twist on it and make sure that it fits in the story. So if there's like, and usually I do have an idea of like what I want to happen. I usually, when I'm coming up with my stories, I think about it like a movie trailer because movie trailers, they don't tell you the whole story unless it's a really bad movie trailer. Then it basically tells you the whole story. But a good movie trailer will basically tell you the beginning, the middle, the end, some things that might happen in between, just to get the audience excited. So that's kind of like what I do. I think about the beginning, the middle, and the end, so I know what's going to happen, and then, but I don't know what's going to happen like in between. I have an idea of it, of course, um, but I kind of just, when I'm writing my books, I kind of just let it happen. I, like all the ideas just pour into me, and then I just write it down. It's kind of a hard process to explain. Even for an author, I can't really put it into words, but I guess that's just kind of my process.
No, I mean, you can't you can't steer a parked car. So
Mhm.
as long as you get something on the page, like you can steer it and edit it and change it and do what you want with it to get that
Yeah,
final product.
yeah.
Um, Now, many teen readers look for characters they can relate to. Think of like Harry Potter or even Luke Skywalker and stuff like that. Um,
Mhm.
how do you create unique characters that people are relatable to the readers?
Yeah, this is a process that I learned over time. As I said, for Ethan Anderson, like my first books, none of my characters were that relatable. But then I realized that if I can't create a relatable character, then I should basically kind of create myself in quotes in the story. So what I mean by that is that when I'm creating my characters, I pull a piece of myself into that character. So I like to make, so for example, I like to make really dumb jokes sometimes. Well, not sometimes, basically all the time. Like everything I say is usually just dumb jokes, and they don't usually land. But that's just my personality. And for a lot of my characters in my books, I will make a character who who makes dumb jokes and who isn't um who probably says the dumbest things at the randomest times, but that's just his character. That's kind of just like a part of me that I put into that character. And then there are times when I can be really, really serious or really, really down. Like say I get a bad grade on a test, then I'll make a character who's really, really serious and who's just always like, oh, I have to go save the world or else someone is going to die or something like that. But yeah, so my recommendation is to like all those who are listening to this and want to write a story but aren't able to create relatable characters, put a piece of yourself into your characters. Or it doesn't specifically have to be you, but it can also be, say, your mom, your dad, your sister, your kids. Put someone into just like think about someone in your life and put them in the story.
That's great advice. I really like that. Incorporating a part of yourself, personal experiences into your writing, into your characters.
Mhm.
What role do you believe themes like friendship and loyalty, self-discovery, etc., play in your stories, especially when set in a magical world?
Um, In the beginning, friend for a book series like Kids, it's kind of all about friendship because they're a team. They have to work together. But I'm not kind of like one of those authors who's like, oh, friendship is going to save the world. Oh yeah. No, I'm kind of like the author who's like going to battle will save the world. Like a nice punch to the villain's face will destroy them. So I'm kind of like my books are kind of like Marvel movies, action movies, superhero movies. I pull a lot of inspiration from those. Um, so friendship does is and friendship, loyalty, they're all very important to me when I'm writing my story. But sometimes I kind of just skew away from them because I don't want all my characters to be friends. I don't want all of them to be loyal. I want to make sure that they're dynamic. And some characters my readers won't like. Sometimes I don't even like my characters. But um, yeah, I don't usually just think about friendship and loyalty. I kind of just think about what's going to happen in the book, what are these characters going to feel, and how are they going to change from it.
Awesome. Well, you talked about villains. How do you create villains that are both unique and powerful and complex?
I think about my siblings, and then I just like put my siblings into the story, and yeah, that's how I make the perfect villain. No, I'm just kidding. Well, partially kidding. Um,
I like it.
yeah. When I'm creating my villains, I also look at villains who, very famous villains like Voldemort, Sauron, lots of these villains out there. But I also try to make my villains unique from all the others out there. They just kind of have to be, um, this, when I don't really know. I kind of struggled to create villains when I was first writing my books because they weren't really evil. I just, in my mind, they were just evil. But then I soon found out how to write a villain. And there's lots of people in history who are very, very bad. And there's even people today who are very, very bad. So sometimes I will pull inspiration from them and I will make someone in real life a villain in my story, but kind of like not say their name or anything, like make them my own villain. But their actions, the way they think, the way they say things is very similar to the way um, bad people or villains in the past in our world in real life probably think and have said things that certain way that my villains in my characters do. So yeah, I pull a lot of inspiration from real life when I'm creating my characters. As I said, when I'm creating my good characters, I pull a part of myself into it. If I'm making villains or the like the bad guy of the story, I'll think about characters or people in real life who are just bad and just did bad things.
Awesome. No, that's great advice for anybody. Now, you mentioned you had a mentor. How has that relationship, how has that developed, and how has that helped your writing and marketing of your books?
Yeah, I have gotten in contact with or gotten in touch with lots of authors and that a lot of people are familiar with, like as I mentioned, Stuart Gibbs, Christopher Paolini, James Riley, lots of these authors out there. Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. There's lots of people out there that I've connected with, and they really helped me with my writing process. And whenever I need advice, I go to them and say, "Hey, I want to write this, but I'm not sure how to do it. Oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And they've kind of just been there just to tell me like, hey, this is a good idea. This is a bad idea. Don't do this, do this. So, that has really helped me in my writing journey. I know that a lot of people out there aren't like they don't have the privilege. I wouldn't say privilege, but they just don't have the chance to get connected with lots of these authors. But I took a leap of faith, as Spider-Man says. And I kind of just went out there and I put myself out there and I just said, hey, to these authors, I'm like, I go to their book events. I'm always monitoring like book events at my local stores, seeing which authors are there, or which authors I'm familiar with. And I'm always meeting new authors, meeting new people. And that has really helped me in these past few years as a writer.
What has been some of the most challenging things as a teen author?
Um, One thing that can be really discouraging is when my books don't come out like the way I want them to come out. What I mean by that is like say there are typos in the book, say there's like an error with the printing, say this publishing company doesn't accept me. Rejection is a really, really big thing as an author, especially for me as a young author, because I've just been rejected over and over again by these publishing companies and literary agents, and that's why I self-publish my books because when you want to publish a book with like a big firm like Scholastic or Simon and Schuster, you have to have a literary agent to basically just like get you in there. And I have to, but the only way to get a literary agent is to send them like a query letter, pitch your book to them, and pitch your idea to them. And I have not had a lot of success when it comes to literary agents. A lot of them reject me. I'm not sure why. I guess it's maybe they think that this is kind of just like a hobby for me, that I'm just gonna write for like a little bit and then not write again. But that's not true. I'm gonna be writing for the rest of my life. Maybe not writing books for the rest of my life, but telling stories and putting my stories out there is still something that I really, really want to do. So if you're a literary agent, please think about that. But anyway, rejection is probably the worst thing for me, and also, as I mentioned before, like silly typos in my book. But I'd say rejection is the most probably like one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with and had to overcome. There was a time when I was really getting rejected a lot, and I thought that I wasn't a good author. Like they just don't think that I am worthy of being an author and that my books, my ideas aren't worthy for them. And I just kind of I put myself in a bad place as a writer, and for some time I didn't even write, but then I'm like, you know what? It's their loss. One day I'm gonna be great, hopefully. And if they don't accept me, that's fine. There's lots of other people out there who probably will. And that's
No,
kind of just my mindset now.
no, that's fantastic. I look forward to seeing the rise of your career. I'm catching you kind of young. Hopefully, you are the next, J.K. Rowling or Andy Weir or Andy
Hmm.
Poloni or not Andy Poloni, Christopher Poloni. Is it Christopher Poloni? I have his book right over here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope you become them, and I can be like a small blip on your journey. Um,
Yeah.
so, uh, who has been some of your biggest influence? I mean, you mentioned a lot, but who's some of your biggest influences that have influenced you?
Um, I think my mom. My mom has really helped me throughout these past few years when it comes to writing, and she herself has her own business. She's been doing lots of things with her career. She's a doctor. She owns a luxury shoe brand called Emar. And you spoke with her obviously, but she's always with me doing stuff. And so it's like the rest of my family, like my dad, my uncle, my aunt, all these. I have a lot of family who are really, really helpful, and they've supported me throughout these years. But my mom has like always been there. She's the one who told me to publish my books. She's the one who kind of guided me, and um today I'm kind of the reason I'm here today is because of her. So I'd say that she's my biggest influence, and she works really hard, her not just for her kids, me and my sister who are always like berating her about stuff, but she has her work as a doctor and she's there for a lot of she's there basically the entire day. Then she has to come home and work with her team for her luxury brand, and she does a lot of stuff. And although like I can see that she's tired, but she's still there to support me, and I really appreciate that. So I'd say that she's my biggest influence when it comes to writing my stories and working hard to get to where I want to be as a writer.
That's awesome. I'm sure when this comes out, she'll like to hear that from you. I
Yeah,
mean, at Dragonsteel, she was there. You weren't there when I first pulled up to your boat booth, but she was pitching the books like your biggest fan. And so I
yeah,
know she appreciates you and is supportive of you.
yeah.
So that's fantastic. So if you could bring one magical creature or object from one of your books to into the real world, what would it be and why?
Mm. There's this there's this sword that Ethan Anderson has in book five, and that basically kind of gives him like these cool powers that allow him to fly and shoot like bursts of energy. It's kind of like Captain Marvel if you're familiar with that character. It's kind of like her, but more like godlike, I'd say. So if I could get that sword, I would. I definitely want that sword. I really want that sword. I should. Now that I think about it, I really want that sword. My sister would be very jealous, which I'm happy for.
That's awesome. So what's next on the horizon? I know you're in school. Do you have any conventions? I know you applied to any. Have you gotten into any? What's next on the horizon, or even just book signings?
I've been applying for lots of awards out there. Another thing my mom wants me to do, and also that I want to do. I think that applying for awards and getting these awards is really helpful and appealing to literary agents and these publishing companies, so that could really, really help me. So I've been applying to lots of book awards. I have another book signing coming up, which is I'd say the biggest book signing in the Bay Area. It's called the Bay Area Book Festival, and I'll be there in May selling my books, and I hope that goes well. There's lots of people there, so it should go well, I hope. And I have lots of other things planned this year, a new book, the last mage book too. I can't really reveal the title right now. Um, but yeah, for this year is looking pretty good. Lots of book signings, a few books coming out, and a few more interviews after this. So, yeah, this is probably going to be very, very good. And the next few years also hopefully going to be good. I have more books coming out, and then 2027 is college time. So I don't know where my career is going to go from there. But right now I'm just sticking with writing books and developing and growing my name.
That's awesome. Aiden, thank you so much for getting on with me today. Go ahead and tell people how they can get a hold of you and your
Yeah,
book.
I have an Instagram, Aiden the Author, and I also have a website, aidentheauthor.com, so you can email me through there. I'm always on, well, I'm not always on Instagram because social media is not great, but I'm monitoring my email and my Instagram, so go ahead and send me a message if you want to write a book, if you know someone who wants to write a book. I'm here to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you
Yeah,
getting on
thank
today.
you.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Troy Podcast. Please subscribe, like, and share with your friends.